Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Courtney Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about some unpopular truths about dating and relationships. Let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree, and then when you're done watching, let me know some of your unpopular truths about dating and relationships. Before we get started, big thank you to Aura for sponsoring today's video. Have you ever Googled yourself and were shocked to see your personal information exposed on one of those public listing sites? Data brokers are making a fortune selling your information to robocallers, spammers, and others who want to learn more about you, like where you live. Luckily, Aura, who is the sponsor of today's video, can identify data brokers exposing your info and submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them to, but they make it super hard to do. Let Aura handle it for you. I know things I absolutely should not know about people just from a simple Google search of their name, which is a really scary thought. Aura does so much more to protect you and your family from online threats that you can't see. It is really easy to set up, so you don't have to download several different apps to get things like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more. You get everything at one affordable price. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online so you can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. You can either let people continue to exploit and profit off of your private information, or you can go to aura.com/CourtneyRyan to start your 2-week free trial, also linked below down in the description. That's aura.com/CourtneyRyan to get a 14-day free trial to see if your personal information has been compromised, which I hope it has not. The first one, which is going to be controversial, and I am well aware of that, is that hookups and situationships are a waste of time, of energy, of mental capacity, of all of the above. Again, keep in mind this video is unpopular truths for a reason. I know I am going against the grain a little bit with this one and for some of the other ones on this list. But I think hookups are a waste of time because hookups often prioritize physical pleasure over emotional intimacy, which can leave some people feeling disconnected or unsatisfied. Humans have a need to connect with each other, and casual encounters typically involve a very brief interaction, which may not allow for the development of deep emotional bonds or meaningful connections. If the individuals participating have different expectations or desires from the hookup, it can lead to disappointment or frustration. It's common that both people involved aren't necessarily going to be on the same page. This usually happens even when you tell yourself that it won't, and can involve emotional risks such as attachment, jealousy, a bunch of stuff that's not so great. Some feelings that are not necessarily so great to have for someone that you are not committed to. Some people may experience negative emotions such as regret or guilt after engaging in casual encounters, particularly here if it goes against your personal values or leads to unintended consequences. Situationships, which refer to ambiguous or undefined relationships that kind of fall between a casual hookup and a committed partnership, can be perceived as a waste of time for several different reasons as well. The first one being a lack of clarity. So situationships often lack clear boundaries, commitment, and defined expectations. This ambiguity can lead to confusion and frustration as people involved may not know where they stand or what they should be expecting from the relationship. Without a clear commitment or foundation, people who are in a situationship may find it challenging to invest emotionally or develop a deeper connection there. This can leave them feeling emotionally unfulfilled or uncertain about the future of the relationship, or if there even is one. Situationships also often lack the stability and structure necessary for personal and relational growth. Without a shared vision or commitment to work through challenges and evolve together, the people involved may feel stagnant or unfulfilled in their personal development. There can also be a pretty unequal investment. Situationships can involve complete imbalances in emotional investment, effort, and expectations. One person may be more interested in a committed relationship while the other prefers to keep things casual. This discrepancy in investment can result in frustration and a sense of wasting time. Investing time and energy into a situationship can prevent the people involved from pursuing more fulfilling relationships or exploring other potential connections that might align with their long-term goals and desires more than this one. Though I've referred to this as unpopular, you might resonate with what I just said and find that hookups, casual flings, or situationships just aren't for you, and that's okay. For those seeking clarity, commitment, and emotional fulfillment, situationships or hookups may not provide the level of satisfaction that you desire. Ultimately, what matters is understanding your own needs and boundaries and making choices that align with your personal well-being and values. Again, I think going against what is popular nowadays or against the grain can feel a bit isolating for people, and you might feel like, oh, I should be someone who is okay with situationships or hookups or casual flings because that is what everyone else is doing. So to just hear that something that is unpopular can resonate with you, I think is really reassuring and something that I wish I would have had when I was going through these stages of my life, because I definitely didn't have the same mindset or fall into the same thought process that a lot of the people around me were doing. And maybe you don't agree with that point or any of the other ones that are going to be on the list today, but if that's the case, you can kindly, emphasis on kindly and respectfully, let me know down in the comments and share your perspectives and opinions. I love to get conversations going that way down there. I'm not always able to reply to every single comment, but I do see a lot of them, and even if I don't respond to it, it could help someone else out down in the comment section. My next unpopular truth is that texting is to facilitate dates, especially in the very beginning stages of dating or talking to someone. You are not a freaking pen pal, and you don't need to text 24/7. Hate to break it to you. Now, I'm not telling you to not communicate with this person or to be inconsistent, but I think we need to drop the idea that a person needs to be available to you constantly. So why is this an unpopular opinion, you might be asking? Because a lot of people seem to think that if someone is not texting you all day, every day, then they must not like you or they're a poor communicator. Neither of those things are necessarily true. I think these days there's an added pressure to be in constant communication because many of us are on our phones a lot, or all day for some of us. Probably more than we should be, in all honesty, but that doesn't mean you need to make yourself available to talk all day long. I think it's really important to set boundaries and not necessarily make yourself available to someone 24/7. Of course, if there's an emergency, that's different. That's not what I'm talking about here. But in the beginning stages of dating, I don't think that you need to be texting someone all day, every day, and that is the only thing we should be basing someone's interest off of. A little bit of small talk can be okay, all right? I'm also not telling you to not text them at all, but texting should really be used as a way to facilitate dates and meeting in person. I'm obviously not talking about a long distance type of situation here because I think that's a completely different story, but realistically here, my point is that you do not need to be texting someone 24/7, and in my opinion, it's completely unrealistic to expect that from someone else. And again, this is unpopular because a lot of people expect just because you're on your phone that you need to reply right away or be available to text them 24/7. And I just don't think that's healthy, and I don't think that's a good thing to be doing personally. The next unpopular truth is that you need to compromise. And one of the reasons I think dating is so difficult now is because people have been sold a lie that you shouldn't have to compromise. Hence why the fact that you do have to compromise is pretty unpopular. The truth here is that every single relationship requires a level of compromise, flexibility, and settling. Settling is not necessarily a bad term, so hear me out here. Why? Because nobody is perfect. There is no perfect person for you. I know our society has painted a picture of never settle or don't make any compromises because with the right person, you won't have to compromise, and I'm sorry, but that is a bunch of baloney. There are some things you should never settle for, yes, but I can promise you that the amount of money someone makes, how tall they are, or how big their butt is not on the list. Sorry, my friend. The unpopular truth here is that compromise is an essential component of any healthy relationship. It involves both people being willing to give, to take, to find mutually agreeable solutions to conflicts or differences. Every single healthy relationship requires a level of compromise. You are not going to like every single thing about the person that you are with. There are going to be things that you have to compromise on and work through together, and that is life. I've done a ton of videos about unrealistic expectations, the difference between standards and preferences that all kind of tie into that point on the topic of making compromises and this term of settling. So I'll link those below for you guys if you want to check them out. My next unpopular truth is that you don't need to have everything in common. It's common for us to look for similarity when dating, and this is okay to an extent, but I think it's important to make sure that you aren't limiting yourself too much about things that don't actually depict true compatibility for a long-term relationship. Social scientists call this homophily and have shown that we rate those who share our views, especially our political views, as more appealing, both socially and romantically, than those who do not. The effects of homophily are even stronger when it comes to education. Researchers at Grand Canyon University found last year that educational attainment is the most important dating criteria for millennials, exceeding earning potential, physical attributes, and political and religious affiliations. They also found that 43% of daters with a master's degree judge potential partners based on the college they attended. Some similarity is no doubt beneficial to partnership, but sameness brings huge costs as well. Romantic love requires complementary, that is, differences. In one study, people described their ideal romantic partners as similar to themselves, but their actual partner's personality traits were uncorrelated with their own. We may think we want partners like ourselves, but we wind up pursuing partnerships with people who are different from us. Despite all of this evidence that we shouldn't really be searching for another version of ourselves, the most common way that Americans find partners these days are websites and apps, which are a smorgasbord of sameness. Algorithms allow people to find dates like themselves with brutal efficiency. This article says it might make for fewer disputes, but in searching for your doppelganger, you might be overlooking the people who complement you psychologically and even physically. And I know a lot of you do not like when I read directly from articles because my voice gets a little bit monotone, so I apologize for that. But I also wanted to mention here, article aside, that a lot of us are looking for someone who is like a carbon copy version of ourselves, like you copy and paste yourself onto the opposite gender. And I understand why you're looking for someone who is similar to you, who shares similar interests, that you can enjoy things together. But the reality is that the person you are with does not need to have every little thing in common with you. You don't need to have all of the same hobbies. You don't need to like all of the same things necessarily. I do think it's really nice to have things in common that you can enjoy doing together and really bond over that. It's not necessary to have every single thing in common. Say you really like metal music. If your partner does not like metal music, that is not necessarily a deal breaker. That does not mean that you guys are not compatible. It just means that you have an interest that is different. And if you are only interested in people who like all of the same things as you, who think the same exact way as you about every single thing, I think you kind of get into this little bubble of no challenging thoughts, this bubble of sameness that almost hinders your growth and personal development more than if you were with someone who maybe disagreed with you on some things or had different interests that you could then open yourself up to. I think it's really powerful when you have a few things in common that you can enjoy together, but you also have a sense of independence and individuality that you can bring to the relationship and open each other up to new things that maybe you wouldn't have discovered before. And this kind of goes back to the idea of open casting and dating that I talked about in a previous video. I talked about it much more in depth over in that video, so I'll link that below for you guys if you want to check it out. My next unpopular truth that is maybe the most unpopular is that adult romantic relationships are conditional. And I know some of you are not going to like to hear that, but before you get upset with me, let me try to explain. Adult romantic relationships can have conditional elements because they often involve mutual expectations, boundaries, and the need for compatibility. People enter into relationships with their own individual needs, desires, and expectations. They seek partners who can fulfill those needs and who are compatible with their own values, interests, and goals. If these conditions are not necessarily met, the relationship may not be sustainable long-term. Emotional and physical compatibility are important aspects of romantic relationships. The people in a relationship need to feel emotionally connected and satisfied, and they may have certain physical preferences or requirements for that. If these aspects are lacking, it can affect the overall satisfaction and longevity of the relationship. Now, whether those expectations or standards are realistic is a different story. I think a lot of people have incredibly unrealistic preferences that they are confusing for standards these days, which makes things even more conditional and transactional than they have been in the past. But I digress. But bringing everything back down to earth and speaking realistically here, an example is that trust is a fundamental aspect of any healthy relationship. People need to have confidence in each other's reliability, honesty, and commitment. If trust is broken or consistently undermined, it can create conditions that strain the relationship. Healthy relationships also require respect for each other's boundaries, both physical and emotionally. Partners need to establish and honor these boundaries to maintain a sense of safety, trust, and autonomy within the relationship. So clearly there are some conditions that need to be met in order for a relationship to be sustainable long-term and healthy, and one that both people feel good in. I also think it's important to note that while conditions exist in relationships, this should not be confused with ultimatums or unhealthy control. That's not what I'm talking about here. My point with this one is that we have basic human needs within a relationship, and if those are not being met, often the relationship will end or will not be sustainable long term, meaning it's not really unconditional. So guys, that is all I have for unpopular truths about dating and relationships. If you like this video or found it helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to be in the loop for when I release new content. Let me know your unpopular truths down below about dating, about relationships, about men, about women, about whatever the heck you want. I would love to make more videos like this, maybe going through some of your unpopular opinions and just kind of break it down and tell you guys what I think. If you haven't already, be sure to follow me over on Instagram at Courtney Christine Ryan. I love connecting with all of you guys over on there as well. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.